Okay, so today's video I'm going to be carving a Charizard deck box. I've been making a lot of these Pokemon deck boxes on commission for people. I'll chuck a few of them on the screen right now, kind of give you an idea of the end product. I want them to look like they're kind of like an ancient artifact that has been found at like a burial site, but they've dug it up and cleaned it up to put it like on display in a museum. So it's old and trashed, but also looks kind of clean, if that makes sense. That's the vibe I'm going for. So my first step is I trace out the card that the person wants. Then I gotta cut the shape of the lid out from this pine, and then I'll transfer this image onto the pine. So generally how I get the image onto the pine is I just put the paper over the top, because it is quite a soft pine, and then I just trace over it, kind of pressing semi-firmly. You don't need to press that firmly with this kind of soft pine. And then underneath, it's a bit tricky to show on camera, but I'll put up a clip in a minute. You can see the imprint underneath, and then I use that later as the guide for my carving. Alright, I finished tracing it, so hopefully you'll be able to see. Oh yeah, you can kind of see that that's like the indentation there. I'll kind of go over that with lead pencil now. There are other ways to get an image onto wood. I like doing it this way because these little indents as well, they kind of act as a bit of a guide when I get to some of the finicky carving, like teeth and stuff later on, and eyeballs. Eyeballs, goddamn, I hate carving eyeballs. When I'm ruling these borders, I intentionally don't make them even because it just adds to that ancient kind of look that I'm going for. When I originally made these, I kind of squared off all the edges and stuff, and it just didn't look right. It didn't look believable as something that was like found in a cave. Hey, come over here. What's this guy's name again?
Charizard.
Okay, good, you got it right this time. A little while ago, she was a bit smaller, and I asked what that Pokemon's name was, and she'd heard it before, but she couldn't remember, and I said, it starts with a Ch, and she said, Chelsea? No, dog, the dragon's name is not Chelsea. Probably
That's my teacher.
You got a teacher named Chelsea, yeah. You don't have a giant orange fire-breathing dragon for a teacher though, do you?
No. He's gonna just tell, hey, do fire. He's just gonna tell you that.
Alright, so what I've... zoom out. What I've just done as my first step is I get just a high-speed cutter, generally a very small one, and go around the outline of basically the Pokemon and the border. And that just sets a line. It's pretty rough, but it sets a line for I'm going to come in with these various different sized high-speed cutters, these big ball ones, and just remove all the material basically that isn't the Pokemon. Out he goes. In he goes. That's quite a technical term. Even this guy's probably a bit big for what I want. I'll probably go with this one. I think that's like a 3mm. I'm not sure. Okay, so I've gone through and removed like all the material around the Pokemon. Now it's time to start doing the Pokemon. Not doing the Pokemon. So the bit I'll be using for the actual Pokemon, most of the work is this piece here. And I'll get a better shot of it. So this is the bit that I'll be using for most of the shaping of the Pokemon. I have two of them. They have ever so slightly different angles. They're just perfect for getting, you can change the angle and get right in there. For example, in this part here, the arm is obviously in front of the wing. So if you're going to run along this here, it's just really going to separate that, keeping that nice hard line there. And later on, when I add the stain, it's going to pull in that quite, like that line there. It's going to kind of hit against it and it's kind of create an illusion of more depth than there really is, and gonna make it look like the arm is a lot further in front of the wing. So I'm gonna do a run right now with this piece, going over, making sure the arms in front of the wing, wings behind the mouth, arms behind the belly, just a bunch of stuff in front of and or behind other stuff, essentially. So you can see I added in the line for the leg here, but it's this real kind of like steep ravine here where I went in and did the line. You can use this same bit though, kind of angled a bit lower, to kind of smooth that and blend in to the rest of the body, so that it's kind of a gradual thing into this leg instead of just this weird ravine crevasse. Okay, bit of a weird angle, but you can kind of see some of the depth and different layers beginning to show. You can see like the wing flap is behind the kind of arm of the wing, and this wing goes behind his body and the leg, blah blah blah. There are certain parts I can't do with such a large bit, like all these finicky details of the tongue and the mouth. I'll switch to a really small high-speed cutter, like a ball one. Get in there and do those. Probably use this high-speed cutter, which is a bit more square, to get in and outline these claws and some of the detail of the fire.
Can you push me out? Can I have something to make?
Yeah, it's gonna stick. Taking a quick break to pick some leaves for my lunch.
I'm chopping your plant for your lunch.
This is a dish that I like to call quinoa with a bunch of stuff from the garden in it. It's quite an easy recipe. You just cook the quinoa and then the garden stuff goes in it. There's nothing initially more to do now. It's time to kind of just refine what's already there. I'm going to go in now with this, I think it's a little grinding, sharpening bit, and just kind of run it along all the edges, clean them up, get rid of the kind of fluff. You might be wondering why not use a router and a routing bit to do that kind of edge work. I guess you could. I do have the routing attachment for a Dremel, but I just don't like the way it kind of limits my movement, basically. You kind of have to hold it down and you can't quite look at every angle because of the way it sits on there. Prefer to do it freehand. Alright, so in the original image, I'll put it on screen now, there's kind of a lot going on in the background. Probably a bit too much for a wood carving, because this is going to be essentially monochrome. You're working with like one color, different shades of brown. So there's some things that just don't read. I think the lightning is going to work really well. So I've got a whole bunch of lightning in the background, really deep, so it'll catch a lot of the stain in there. I also just went over with this grinding stone, focus, which when you're working with a softwood like pine, that's really good for just smoothing out some of the wibbly wobbly areas. The next step is probably my favorite step. I'm going to go over it with a finishing wheel. I got a bunch of different grits of these. Today I'm going to go with strawberry flavored. That's a joke, they don't have flavors, the colors are just different grits. Wouldn't go too high of a grit with something that has such small detail as this one. You might risk just whomping off one of the teeth altogether. This is probably my favorite step because this is when you really see how good it turned out, because it gets rid of all the lead pencil as it goes across. So you really are left with only wood, and you find out which bits maybe didn't do good enough. So, just quickly pause the carving to write my two latest patrons on the table, Jeff Bull and Garrett. Anyone that supports me on Patreon gets their name written on the table, and also I do a pun insult based on their name. So, Jeff Bull, more like Jeff pulls on his own butt. Garrett, more like Marrett. Marrett? No. Garrett, Darrett, Larrett. Garrett, more like Shavit. Shove it up your butt. I can't think of a good one for Garrett. Anyone that supports me on Patreon also gets to see some exclusive videos I put on there. Anyway, Patreon, link in the description. Back to the carving. I don't think there's going to be too much I need to go back and fix, honestly. Might have to do some hand sanding just to smooth out some bits, like here, where there's just some burr marks. This is about 240 grit, something like that. I don't go too high with the sanding. 240 is about the highest I'm willing to go, because I don't actually want it that smooth. I want like the illusion of smooth, but I still want there to be weird bumps, because like I said, I want this to look like it's like this ancient box thing that's been dug up from a temple or some crap. Basically, I want it to look like it was made in a time before there was power tools, where they couldn't actually get stuff super smooth. So I'm going to go in with the sanding drum, not only sand it down, but add a lot of defects and gouges and scratches. Like I said, I want this to look like a recovered artifact, so I actually add defects on purpose. Now for the box, I'm not actually going to be making the box. Sometimes I do make the box. I have made it in the past where people want specific shapes or little secret drawers and stuff. Generally though, when people just want like a basic deck box, this is enough to fit 2 decks next to each other. I get these unfinished jewelry boxes. So I'll be using the sanding drum to add the defects to this, removing the lid because I don't want that. That's going to be the lid. Also take off the hinges and bracket and weather them. Might just have a coffee. That's not integral to the process, but I like to do it. Why am I breaking it? Well, that's a good question that I'll explain to the audience. Yes, I'm just adding the defects to the box. I like to go along with the sanding drum and kind of just rough this edge up again, because like I said, nice squared off edges just don't quite look right. So I did the sanding with the sanding drum and then a little palm sander, and now I'm hand sanding it. You might think it's lazy to just get the pre-made unfinished boxes. It just doesn't make sense for me to make it. The box isn't anything special really, it's just like 7mm plywood with just like miter joints. I could easily make it, but it's just going to be more money for the person buying it for essentially the same product in the end. Economically, it just makes sense for me to get these and put a lot of work into this. So anyway, I sanded the box and the lid to basically smooth out all those like defects I put in. They're very rough when you go in with that drum. Alright, I'm ready to start staining. Now this is the stain I use, if you can see it through the filth. Just be careful with stain. Not all stain is created equal. Some of them are essentially kind of like primers, so they're very thin. For this kind of thing, I think you need quite a thick stain, which is what I have here. I've learnt that by making a very fatal error. If you use the stain that's a bit too watery, it kind of softens the edges, fluffens them up because it all absorbs in and screws it up. Now I use a very thick brush and I apply the stain so thick, thick with like 2 C's, like the cool way of spelling thick. Here we go. Alright, so you can see straight away, I'll zoom in a bit. You can see the stain starting to sink into those lightning things at the back there. Oh yeah, this is working good. Like I said, very heavy. If there are certain things that I wanted to be quite dark and they don't turn out quite as dark as I was hoping they would, then I'll go in with a really small fine brush and just kind of dab on a little bit of extra stain. Like for example the mouth there, I kind of want that to be quite dark. It's like the recesses of his mouth. It's not really picking it up the way I was hoping, so I'll get my small brush in a second and show you what I mean. Just a dab. Oh, see, yeah, that's perfect. There you go. This is just the first coat of stain anyway, and I am going to add a different shade of stain in the background later to make the Pokemon pop even more. Staining the box, pretty much the same deal. Less exciting because this is a big old box. Second coat application. That's the box with 2 coats of stain and the lid with 2 coats of stain. They might not end up having the exact same amounts of coats because they are different wood, so the stain comes through differently depending on how many coats, but you just kind of eyeball it, see what happens. Okay, time to weather up the hinges and stuff. Basically what I do is I apply a tiny bit of spray paint, quite liberally actually, and then I just dab it with a towel. Sometimes what I'll also do is when the paint is dried, I'll just give it the tiniest little spritz of water just so it gets like a little bit of rust, like a little bit of a patina, just to give it that aged thing. Alright, so off camera I've added more coats of stain to the box and the thing. They're pretty much ready. The last step now is I'm going to add slightly darker stain. Or is it? Oh god. Just, that's the colour it is. You can't see the label. It's mahogany. It's much darker than this. I'm going to add that only in the background of this thing. And alright, this is all dry now, so I'm going to attach the hinges and stuff back on. So I've carved a lot of Charizards, in particularly the like original Charizard card. I'll put it on screen now if you don't know the one. It wasn't until I started carving it that I realized he's got such a weird pose. One of his arms is just like curled up, like randomly on his belly. So he's like blowing fire with one arm like this and one arm like this. It looks ridiculous. I never noticed it until you have to like analyze every detail to carve it. And it's weird. In the comments, am I wrong? Does he look stupid? Now you can't not see that. So the last step is I just give it a coat of this varnish stuff and then it's complete. The next shot will be just the box.
Why?
Okay, and there is the Charizard box completed. I don't know, you could put Pokemon cards in it. That's kind of what I make them for. Yeah, so I do some weird stuff with the staining. Not really traditionally how you use stain, but again, it's because I want it to have that weathered look. I think it turns out pretty good. So this box is actually part of a larger order. Some guy ordered 3. He got a Pikachu, already done that, it's Charizard, and the next one is Blastoise, which you can see is kind of almost ready for the staining stage. And then I also made this. I didn't carve that, I just made it.